government bailouts. We cannot allow this to continue. Let me remind the House of the package of measures government wants to implement or is implementing to stimulate economic growth. These were outlined by the President in September last year. A, implementing growth-enhancing economic reforms, such as broadband spectrum allocation, and we've heard the Minister of Communications making announcements in this regard, the restructuring of the electricity sector, and the regulation of the transport sector to lower prices. B, reprioritization of public spending to support job creation and economic growth, such as, for example, special allocations to the land bank to support emerging farmers. Establishment of an infrastructure fund, which will be based and managed by the DBSA. Addressing urgent matters in education and health. I'm pleased to say in the health sector, the Minister of Health has been able already to identify a number of bottlenecks which have been causing problems for us. And he briefed me this afternoon about that. Investing in municipal social infrastructure improvement. The current economic performance will have a substantial impact on our fiscal stability, requiring tougher and strategic choices. Madam Chair, up to now, we have maintained real growth in spending, and the budget tabled in February reflected a real increase that is above inflation of 2.4% in spending estimates. It will be difficult. It will be difficult to sustain this momentum if we do not decisively address certain aspects of government spending, especially for underperforming programs. In this regard, we need to look carefully at those government programs that can be recalibrated to improve their performance and to lessen their reliance on the fiscus. Honorable members, there are serious challenges in our municipalities. And as the President of Salga reminded us the other day, we all live in local government, and therefore we have an interest in the proper functioning of local governments. The Auditor General presented his findings on local government finances on 26 June 2019, and needless to say, the outcomes are very disappointing. In this regard, I'll be working very closely with the Minister of Cooperative Governance to address some of those issues. We are rebuilding our damaged institutions and restoring good governance, appointing strong leadership to various entities. In this regard, you are aware that based on the Nugent Commission of Inquiry, we have now appointed a new commissioner for SARS, Mr. Edward Kieswetter. And congratulations, sir. I think he might be somewhere in the house. We're also pleased to welcome a new interim board of the directors of the Public Investment Corporation, and we wish the members well in the performance of their duties. In the South African Reserve Bank, we welcome the reappointment of Governor number 10, Lesetja Kganyago, to a further 5 years in office, and the appointment of 2 new deputies Governor of the South African Reserve Bank. I think one of them is here. Fundi, you can stand so they can see you. She's brand new Deputy Governor. I conclude, Madam Chair, by thanking the committee once again for the work that they've done in looking at all the items that are in this budget. Thank you very much.
We now call Honorable Maswangani, the chairperson of the committee. seconded. Nakhensa mtshama xitulu holobye wa swa timali tatana Tito Mboweni, museketeri wa holobye Dr. David Masondo, swirho swa huvo ya endla milawu ya Afrika-Dzonga, Director General na vatirhelamfumo hinkwavo hi ku ya hi swiyimo swa n'wina, Governor ya Reserve Bank, and congratulations for your reappointment. Varhangeri hinkwavo va ti-public entity lava nga kona madyambu lama na milosa. Namuntlha ni lava ku hoxa xandla eka njhekanjhekisano wa mpimanyeto wa ndzawulo ya timali ya lembe ximali ra 2019 na 2020. Ndi laha ku ta andlala xiviko xa komiti ya swa timali. Ndi ta sungula ndi vulavula hi leswi vandla leri fumako ra African National Congress ri nga fikelela swona eka 25 wa malembe lawa ya nga hundza. The democratic miracle that ushered in the new South Africa 25 years ago represented the aspirations of all our people, black and white, young and old, men and women, urban and rural, and was an inspiration to the world. It is important to look back, focusing on 25 years as an account of our achievements, persistent challenges, new challenges from the internal and external environment. It also accounts for the opportunity cost with a view of enabling us to chart a sustainable path. The review reminds us of the words of Martin Luther King Jr. when addressing at Stanford University on April 14, 1967. He said, I quote, "We are not where we want to be and not where we were going to be, but we are sure we are a long way away from where we were," close quote. The society we inherited was a deeply divided one, with the economy, education, health, infrastructure, and social welfare systems servicing a few. In fact, every aspect of human endeavor was built on a systematic structure of racial, gender, and class discrimination. From a budget perspective, we inherited a $25 billion debt from the apartheid government, which it had used to prop itself up in its dying days and to fund its security apparatus. This odious debt was added to the $850 million that the apartheid government borrowed from the IMF during the last year of apartheid rule. And although we had a number of other government frameworks over the 25 years, like GIA, ASGISA, the New Growth Path, and the National Development Plan, and we may have had the debates about the substance of this, our guiding aspirations remain as reflected in the RDP. The 25 years show that government made a remarkable strides in meeting the aspirations of our people for better life for all. The 5 successive administrations have made solid advances towards meeting the basic needs. Millions previously denied their basic rights were provided access to education, electricity, water, sanitation, and healthcare. The budget ensures greater focus on confronting problems facing the nation through the implementation of the programs announced by the President Ramaphosa during his SONA speech. Implemented effectively, this budget provides a platform for renewal, inclusive growth, and job creation. The 2019-2020 budget moderates spending and raises the revenues required to contain the growth in national debt while minimizing the negative effects of growth. We support reforms to relieve policy uncertainty and blockages which are yielding results for investment in mining, telecommunications, and tourism. Honorable Chairperson, we are saying that the issue of the broad-based black economic empowerment needs serious attention. According to the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Commission report entitled The National Status and Trends on Black Economic Empowerment Report of the 31st of March 2018, control of the boards of the South African listed entities were still concentrated within the hands of white and foreign males, which is 58%, with equal representation between black male at 20% and black female 18% for those entities that reported under Section 13G of the Act. We welcome the focus on youth, which reflects the largest allocation of resources towards the government, priorities on basic and higher education, skills development, training to contribute to social cohesion. Over and above the 30 billion rand allocated to building new schools and maintaining infrastructure, 2.8 billion is allocated to phase out pit latrines in over 2,400 schools. We support the phasing in of free education through the allocation of 111.2 billion rand. Chairperson, broadly speaking, again, what we want to indicate is that the transformation in the financial sector is slow. Amongst the reasons advanced for the slow transformation pace is that the sector is highly regulated locally and internationally through instruments like Basel II and Basel III regulations for the banks. We are saying that the deracialization of the economy is very crucial. Economic transformation must benefit the marginalized in society by bringing them into the mainstream of the economy. So the transformation of the banks, insurance industry, and related industry should be expedited in this regard. Our people cannot remain outside the mainstream of the economy. Honorable Chairperson, we want to indicate that there are challenges that this economy has faced, and some of them the minister has gone through them. However, what we want to indicate, Honorable Chairperson, is the issue of the youth graduate unemployment rate increase. According to the latest quarterly labor force survey released by Stats SA, the youth aged 15 to 24 years are the most vulnerable in the South African labor market, as the unemployment rate among this age group was 55.2% in the first quarter of 2019. Amongst graduates in this group, the unemployment rate was 3.15 during this period compared to 19.5% in the fourth quarter 2016, an increase of 11.4 percentage points quarter on quarter. The burden of unemployment is concentrated amongst the youth aged 15 to 34 years, as they account for 63.4% of the total number of unemployed persons. We must make sure that this budget goes a long way in alleviating the problem of youth unemployment, because as we speak, we also have a cohort of graduates who are unemployed out there in society. Moving towards the last section of the report are the observations and the recommendations. We are saying that the committee requires an explanation from National Treasury on why the National Payment Systems Bill is no longer part of the bills that will be tabled in this financial year. The committee requires that the National Treasury to table its proposed bills as soon as possible to enable the committee to plan its legislative program, given that this year is shorter owing to the national elections that took place in May 2019. The committee urges the National Treasury to expedite its work on revising the policy framework on modernization of approvals for expenditure deviations. The committee believes that the enactment of the long-awaited public procurement bill will go a long way in dealing with the issue of SCM deviations, eliminate the fragmentation of the country's procurement policy. Honorable Chairperson, the committee urges the Minister to expedite the appointment of the senior managerial officials where there are acting capacities within Treasury in order to ensure leadership stability and the implementation of the Auditor General's leadership, financial management and governance management recommendations. The committee is concerned about the financial state of SOEs. The Minister has spoken to this. The committee also knows the reforms that have taken place since 2017 to turn the financial position and management of SOEs. However, many SOEs continue to pose a great risk to the fiscus. While the committee recognizes that the turnaround plans at SOEs cannot be achieved overnight, it is concerned on the impact and effectiveness of these changes. The committee will request more information from National Treasury to justify requests for extra resources, bailouts and/or guarantees, and insist on conditions being attached to any approvals. We also raised the issue of the municipalities, and the Minister has actually attended to this matter, that we believe that the report that has been issued by the Auditor General entitled Consolidated General Report on the Local Government Audit Outcomes, MFA 2017-2018, shows a serious regress in regard to audit outcome. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, una issue ya vendor pension fund yo bva ka reporto ya public protector report number 18 of 2011-2012 sa committee re ko humbela muhulwane wa ministara na department ya treasury uri va attende kha heli phungo la vendor pension fund uri haningei khala Limpopo, in particular khala Vembe, heli issue is serious ngamand. So richubuya rido umbela uri National Treasury report uri ukoitwa mini nga heli pungu. Sustaining committee ya finance bo chairperson riko toda udzinginisa uri riko supporta report nda case.
Against Chapsegi. We now call on the Honorable Hill Lewis from the DA.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I congratulate the Minister on his reappointment, and I congratulate the Deputy Minister on his appointment, and I'm looking forward to working with them both and with the committee to reverse our current economic stagnation. My impression of the Minister is that he is hardworking and honest, characteristics that will serve him well in the battles ahead. He also clearly cooks a lot better than I do. The Minister has been returned to this most difficult of jobs at a profoundly concerning time for our country. Our economy is not growing, the public purse is empty, national debt is fast approaching unsustainable levels, and still 10 million people are without work. In this context, the Minister's primary objective and the primary objective of the Treasury must be to stabilize our national debt. Debt is projected to rise sharply to 60.2% of GDP by 2023. And that's only if growth comes in at projection and no further spending is introduced. But the reality is that the economy will not grow at 1% this year. And the reality is that this budget is fast turning into a bailout budget, with record-breaking bailouts for Eskom, and as we've just heard from the Minister, more bailouts for Denel, SAA, and SABC on the cards. A bailout budget would smash through the Treasury's debt commitments. a bailout budget would hobble our country with higher than ever debt service costs, already projected at 277 billion rand a year by 2023. This would be a failure by the minister and by the department to manage our public debt prudently. Secondly, the minister must at all costs ensure that we retain our investment grade credit rating, which we are just barely holding on to with one last agency, and restore our investment grade rating with the others. Third, he must boost economic growth by driving real structural reforms aimed at building business confidence and driving private sector investment. Fourth, he must stabilize public expenditure by implementing a comprehensive spending review and halting any further increases not related to core service delivery. Fifth, he must continue, as he has done, to stand up for the independence and integrity of the South African Reserve Bank, the South African Revenue Service, the Public Investment Corporation, and the National Treasury itself. The assault on our parliamentary democracy that we saw in this chamber in the previous debate was exactly the same assault that those who perpetrated it wish to perpetrate against our independent institutions. And that must be resisted and fought against by the minister. In that regard, I want to congratulate Governor Kganyago on his reappointment, and to you, Madam Deputy Governor, congratulations on your appointment. And I wish you best for your tenure. Finally, the minister must show that he is serious about the reform of our state-owned entities. And I would have hoped that he would have been much firmer and stronger in this regard this evening than he has been. For the fact of the matter is, he could send a very powerful signal by placing South African Airways into business rescue immediately and preparing it for sale. These are the things the minister must do now, since the government has really run out of other options, and it is on these things that we will judge him in his coming mini-budget and in the main budget. Since this is my first Treasury debate, let me set out what my approach will be. The Finance Minister will have my support, so long as he acts in the best interest of building long-term prosperity through economic growth. When he acts in favor of growth and prosperity, we will back him, even when his own party does not. But if he dithers and delays in the urgent reforms we need, or if he gives any appeasement to the enemies of growth, then we will oppose him. We will also make real alternative proposals, both by amending the budget and by proposing new legislation. It is time for some new, innovative thinking on how to get our economy growing. I hope that he will take our proposals seriously and consider them meaningfully. All of our proposals are based on the core belief that careful stewardship of our public finances fosters economic growth, and that growth delivers real prosperity for all our citizens. We will table amendments to this appropriations bill to cut wasteful expenditure and to redirect it to increased police expenditure, to help build an honest professional police service, increased health expenditure to bring down infant mortality, improve cancer care, and forever prevent a repetition of life esidimeni, increased education expenditure to provide for new STEM schools, and an additional allocation to the Department of Labor and Employment to provide for the reskilling and training of workers who have lost their jobs. All of these amendments will be budget neutral, funded by cutting expenditure on wasteful programs, executive luxuries, and simply bad policies. We will also revive the private members' bill introduced by the DA in the 5th Parliament, called the Fiscal Responsibility Bill, which aims to introduce fiscal rules for the first time in South Africa to reduce the budget deficit and our national debt. And we will introduce a new private members' bill, along with my colleagues in the Department of Public Service and Administration, to ensure greater accountability and transparency in public service employment, senior appointments, and public wage agreements. We look forward to working with the Minister and to the Treasury on these alternative ideas that will bring prosperity to all South Africans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Lewis. Honorable Shibambo of the EFF will take the debate forward. Honorable speakers, please pardon us. Our technology is failing us. The clocks are off, but we have our clock here. So I'm sorry for that. They are
there's no
working
problem.
on it.
There's no problem. I was chair. I'll finish. You will just let me talk when the perspective is clear. I will say I'm done. Then you will know the time has been dealt with. No, thank you very much. I was chair, and I want to start by saluting the commissars and fighters who earlier on took a courageous action against Mr. Rogue Unit. For taking that action, it's courageous. When we did that on the 5th Parliament against Mr. Jacob Zuma, a lot of people reacted in the manner in which society is reacting now and say the EFF is reckless and so on and so forth. And Zuma is later on removed as a president because of the EFF, so single-handedly. And when we raised concerns against Nhlanhla, the same issues were raised there. We told him exactly in this room that he won't be a minister of finance for a very long time, and he fell on his own sword. So we want to tell Mr. Rogue Unit that he won't be a minister for a very long time, and at least this is on record. He will fall on his own sword very soon. Now, Minister, the previous financial statements of the National Treasury illustrates that there was irregular expenditure of about 758 million rands and wasteful expenditure of 67 million rand by National Treasury, which amongst its many responsibilities is to educate and guide the municipalities and other government departments against irregular and wasteful expenditures. But National Treasury is involved in that as well. There's no believable mechanisms to arrest that thus far. And I don't know why the chairperson of the committee, when he was speaking about the mechanisms that they have to be dealt with, he never spoke about that. He also never spoke about the fact that we said in the committee that the process that was followed to appoint SARS commissioner must be reported to Parliament so that we can satisfy ourselves that it was a thorough process that we are dealing with in terms of all of those issues. Let's leave that, and that is obvious. We can't agree with the budget vote that doesn't have mechanisms on how we're going to deal with irregular and wasteful expenditure. Let's deal now much more substantially with some of the policy issues that we raised in SONA. One is the issue of establishment of a sovereign wealth fund. I see the Department of Trade and Industry, the minister is excited about it. It should not be established in Department of Trade and Industry. It must be under National Treasury, but it must be preceded, Chair, by a joint study tour of the committee and the National Treasury to Singapore and to Norway. When we're about to pass the legislation called the Twin Peaks legislation around the regulation and oversight of financial institutions, we undertook a joint study tour to different countries. We should do that, and then we come back with proper legislative framework on how a sovereign wealth fund should be established. Because although it's going to play microeconomic roles, there are macroeconomic consequences that will come with the sovereign wealth fund. That is one issue. So the Financial Matters Amendment Bill, I think it's an act now which was passed last year, somehow permits for creation of state banks. One is that we must expedite the licensing of Post Bank into a fully fledged bank. It disburses currently almost 200 billion of social grants to different individuals. So it must be brought into a regulatory framework that is outlined in the Banks Act. It's long overdue. It's a logical thing that must be done, but also the South African Reserve Bank must, as a matter of urgency, exit its ownership of the African Bank. And those shares must be ceded to the National Treasury. The shares that are owned by the consortium of banks must be ceded to black owners in a proper way that is guided in terms of what should happen. And then we must then introduce a new ownership model of a state-owned company in terms of what should happen. Now, about the PIC, we think we have said that publicly, that we don't agree with the appointment of Maria Ramos. she's your friend and her husband is your friend. So that appointment is nepotistic. It's wrong. And we must say this in front of you. We're not gossiping. We're saying it in front of you that don't put people that are closer to you in the management of extremely complex institutions, particularly the PIC. But the policy issue that is long overdue about the PIC is its investment mandate. That you cannot permit and allow government pension funds to be overexposed in the manner in which PIC assets are exposed to NASPAS. 250 billion rands worth of shares are owned by the PIC in NASPAS. That is like more than 10% of the overall assets under management. What will happen to government employees' pensions if NASPAS follows the same crisis that Steinhoff faced? We're just going to lose 250 billion in the manner that is. So the investment mandate of the PIC should be debated in the fifth parliament. We had begun to legislate that there must be developmental impact in terms of the investment decisions of the PIC on the people who are depositors, who are putting money there. But we had said that government must not outsource its responsibilities in the management of PIC funds because it underwrites all the assets under GEPF. So you can't outsource that. So your deliberate exclusion of the deputy minister from the board of the PIC is problematic. It's actually reactionary. And I must say it here is not a gossip. It's one of the issues that we had publicly communicated as the EFF. You have to rethink that. You still have time to deal with it much more differently in terms of all these issues. Now, you need to utilize fiscal policy and broadly procurement policies to drive localization and industrialization. And that can only happen through amendment of the existing procurement laws. That the state should purchase all, more than 80%, if not 90, if not 100% of goods that are made in South Africa. And then that will be an obligatory law in terms of what should happen. We are going to table the law that will discontinue private ownership of the South African Reserve Bank. I don't understand the excitement around that in terms of all these issues. But we don't agree with the budget because you are not ready to manage the finances. You are not ready to deal with the wasteful and irregular expenditures that incurred in the previous financial year.
Thank you very much.
I said I must finish first and then we'll conclude from
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable member, are you okay? Thank you, thank you. We now call Nkosi Buteles. Oh, he's here to take the debate forward. He's from the IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, the Minister and members. National Treasury needs to promote transparency, accountability and sound financial competence in managing the country's finances. It seems as though Treasury is not so much hands-on in making certain that departments actually follow thorough process in terms of dealing with their finances. There is no financial legislative discipline on the part of accounting officers in managing their budgets in a manner which is consistent with the PFMA and Municipal Finance Management Act and National Treasury regulations because consequences are absent in financial management discourse of this country. Government spending is inconsistent with the needs of this country. The priorities of our government are questionable and financial decisions made by our government have not focused on national needs. The state-owned entities, Honorable Chairperson, encounter similar challenges where National Treasury keeps allocating funds to them, yet they are an utter mess. ESCOM is visually bankrupt. AMCO is in disarray. South African Airways has got massive debt. Danel and Transnet are all tainted by corruption. Honorable Chairperson, as the IFP, we noted the President's very keen and strong political will to clean up the road that is running this country to the ground. Yet we feel that that is not enough. The issue of cadre deployment rather is a very big challenge that needs to be addressed and prioritized, Honorable Minister. We found that many individuals are tasked with managing complicated and demanding government portfolios. And they are placed in this position based on their political affiliation rather than the competencies that they should have. And this compromises the state of our country. The recycling of the same individuals is telling that the country is at the least of a worry of those in power. We see little to no consequence management for those found implicated and guilty of corruption. A lot more needs to be done so that we can recover the monies that are squandered and embezzled. In 2003, Cabinet took a decision to replace the legacy of financial system of government. An integrated financial management system was commissioned by government through the National Treasury, and this project has so far costed over 1.8 billion in government paid expenditure. And Parliament has engaged the National Treasury over this project, and there is no conclusion to this regard. An Auditor General has come. The AG has once again announced regrets in audit outcomes, with just 18 of 257 municipalities audited receiving clean audit, which is a serious concern that we need to address, Honourable Minister. Again, the influence of politics cannot be underestimated. Accountability and ethics come from the top, and just like the AG said, and if I may quote, if an organization is led by unethical and have disregard for governance, compliance, and control, and are not committed to transparency, accountability, it will filter through the lower levels of that organization. Inevitably, it will filter through, the culture of poor discipline, impunity, and non-delivery will develop, leading to the total collapse of that organization, close quote. And this is exactly what we are seeing here. I like the analogy that the Honourable Minister made here of an ALU, which is in front of us here, to say one reason that makes an ALU to be resilient is the fact that it's got properties which allows it to do so. And if our country does not have regard for all these pieces of legislation which seeks to assist our municipalities and our government departments to have sound financial control, we shall never actually be resilient as this ALU. Honourable Chairperson and the Minister, we support the budget of IFP. Thank you.
Thank you, Babu Telezi. Honorable Vessels, from the FF Plus, is now your time.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Chairperson, just like the Honourable President Ramaphosa, I also have a dream. I dream of a sustainable economy, an economy that grows and where wealth is created, where poverty and unemployment are eradicated. I dream of a South Africa where there is policy certainty, where there's policies aimed at creating equal opportunities for all. I dream of a South Africa where policies are aimed at creating a conducive environment for the private sector to create employment, grow the economy, and contribute to the fiscus. I dream of a country without black holes for tax money, such as our state-owned entities. I dream of a country where state-owned entities such as South African Airways and Eskom are privatized. Chairperson, I dream of a South Africa where municipalities, towns and cities function, where there's financial management, where there's funded budgets, and where services are delivered to the people of South Africa. I dream of a South Africa that is not a welfare state where people are kept dependent on social grants, unsustainably so for political gains. I dream of a South Africa where there's a fiscal commission which functions independently, like the Reserve Bank, and determines the VAT rate dependent on state expenditure, so doing curbing state expenditure. I dream of a parliament that is not only a rubber stamp, but actually scrutinizes budgets, where there's not these mini plenaries, but actual budget debates, where we actually take a budget and scrutinize it, and where the ruling party does not then say, yes, there's very good contributions, but unfortunately we can't amend a budget. I dream of a parliament where a budget can be amended, where the ruling party realizes that it can be amended. I dream of a South Africa where the programs of National Treasury is aimed at supporting municipalities and provinces, but that they actually bear fruits and then become obsolete. I dream of a South Africa without e-tolls, Minister, and overtaxation of individuals and companies, causing a vicious cycle of less expendable income of individuals and companies, and thus creating less spending and a declining economy. I dream of a South Africa without an unnecessary corrupt road accident fund as part of the fuel levy, but rather compulsory third-party insurance for all vehicle owners. I dream of a South Africa where there's actual responsible governance, where National Treasury is not the only department that does something and says what is wrong and what is being done wrong. I dream of a South Africa where there's not a schizophrenic ruling party, where members of the ruling party of a certain department will say other departments are wrong and are wasting money and are corrupt and officials should be dismissed, but that ruling party actually does that and are not schizophrenic about it. I dream of a South Africa that is to the benefit of all its residents and not only a politically connected elite. I believe that that dream can come true, but, Chairperson, not under an ANC government. None of those dreams will ever come true under an ANC government. We can have the best Minister of Finance, but his strength will not be enough to combat the corruption and the mismanagement of his own party. The fault lies with the ANC. National Treasury can do just what they want, and they do good work, but their programs do not bear fruit because of the ruling party that's schizophrenic. In municipalities, they waste the money, they approve unfunded budgets, and then this Treasury must appoint technical advisors to our municipalities. Why is that necessary? Why is it necessary to appoint technical advisors if the best people are appointed by ANC councils? I thank you. Our dream can come true, and our dream can come true, but without an ANC government. I thank you.
Now we invite the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Nchabisegi Masonto.
Madam Chairperson, honorable members, I'm grateful to participate in my first budget vote debate on the National Treasury. Although we face many challenges, but if we take a step back and reflect on what we've achieved in the 25 years of democracy, we have much to be proud of. As we proudly celebrate our milestones, our country has, in the recent past, gone through a difficult period. But I believe that the rebuilding efforts we are currently undertaking demonstrate our resilience and a remarkable capacity for self-correction. In my brief remarks, I'll focus on two issues. Firstly, restoring our fiscal strength. Secondly, highlighting achievements and plans of the entities under the mandate of National Treasury. Honorable members, the fiscal strength of any country depends on economic growth, without which there will be no employment, state revenue necessary to serve our people. Economic growth depends on the investment rates, which have been low since the global economic crisis. At the moment, our fiscal system remains at risk because our GDP growth and levels of investment have been low. For the reasons that the minister has already outlined, restoring our fiscal strength is necessary in order to continue providing needed services in our society and to create conditions for inclusive growth. Madam Chair, we're saying inclusive growth because growth can be jobless, growth can be exclusive in racial, gender, and class terms. Government remains committed to a stable debt path, including by slowing the increase in debt service costs and addressing spending performance. At the same time, we need to restore the financial viability of our SOEs. As the minister said, additional financial injections to stabilize SOEs cannot be unconditional. The state-owned companies will be expected to implement stricter conditions for future financial support, implement the new framework for the structure of these entities, work towards introduction of more private sector participation in the spaces in which they operate. Madam Chair, let me turn on the second issue of my remarks today, which is institutions. Good institutions matter in economic development. Imagine a South Africa without an efficient revenue service like SARS. Where will we get the money to invest in our education, health, and infrastructure? Where will the money come from if we have no efficient SARS? Institutions provide predictable rules which are important for investors. There are no investors who will invest in a country without predictable rules and institutions that are working. In rebuilding our institutions, we will also entrench institutional culture of professionalism, transparency, accountability, and sustainability. These are important values for critical building of a developmental state. National Treasury is responsible for 16 entities. Let me outline some highlights of the achievements and future plans of a few of our entities. In the interest of time, I will only focus on 4 entities. But I will be pleased to provide a detailed report to members for each entity. The South African Revenue Services. Despite its recent challenges, as the minister has indicated, SARS remains one of our state institutions that resembles important features of a developmental state in a democratic South Africa. A democratic state must have internal capacity to ensure institutional and policy coherence. It requires competent bureaucracy operating on predictable and impersonal rules. SARS has new leadership at the helm, and they are managing a turnaround strategy to restore good governance and integrity of that institution. Over the next year, SARS will adopt a strategic focus in making it easier for citizens to fulfill their tax obligations while strengthening its enforcement capabilities to pursue all those who violate our tax system and laws. The immediate focus will be on closing the gap and recovering lost revenue. In addition to implementing the findings of the Nugent Commission as the Minister has indicated, SARS management is also taking more proactive steps to fight the activities in the illicit economy. Following the amendments of the Financial Intelligence Center Act in 2017, the National Treasury and the FIC ushered in a new approach to the implementation of measures against money laundering and terrorist financing, which require businesses to identify and put in place measures to mitigate against criminal usage of their products and services. Close working relationship between the Financial Intelligence Center and the criminal justice system and other competent authorities will enable us to provide essential financial intelligence to fight this crime. The DBSA continues to upscale its support of infrastructure in an effort to contribute towards economic growth and development. National Treasury is working with the DBSA and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to operationalize the Infrastructure Fund, which will finance large infrastructure projects through blended finance. In 2019-2020, the DBSA will continue supporting municipal infrastructure, especially in poor areas. The bank will also support projects being undertaken by SOEs and public-private partnership. The Public Investment Corporation manages the assets of the Government Employees Pension Fund, the Social Security Fund, and other small funds. The PIC will continue to fulfill its mandate as outlined in the law and according to its performance plan. PIC manages over 2 trillion worth of assets in a well-diversified portfolio of investment. The corporation will invest 9 billion towards development property investment, including new developments, refurbishments, and upgrades, and rural development investment. Finally, the lifespan of the Commission of Inquiry into the allegations of wrongdoing regarding the PIC, which was appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa in October 2018, has been extended from its original termination date of April 2019, and a final report is now expected on the 31st of July 2019. Let me join the Minister and other honorable members in congratulating the newly appointed interim PIC board and the appointment of the new deputy governors, as well as the reappointment of Governor Lisicha Kganyago. In conclusion, Madam Chair, we must indeed restore the integrity of our democratic institutions. Central to this is a government that is capable of meeting its obligations to the citizens of our country. Therefore, we must restore fiscal strength and debt sustainability for the sake of both our current obligations and intergenerational fairness. I thank you.
Go. We now invite Honorable Swart from the ACDP to take the debate forward.
Thank you, House Chair, and thank you, honourable members. May I firstly also congratulate the Governor of the Reserve Bank for his reappointment and the appointment of the Deputy Governors. And I would also like to congratulate the Minister on his reappointment as well. We also look forward to working together with him. I mentioned earlier to him that I was looking forward to him quoting some scripture this time because he quoted it in the previous parliament. So we look forward to that as well in your next address, or maybe in the response. I remember you referring in the beginning of the year to certain scriptures and my retort to that, and so we look forward to that as well. Malabongwe Gamalen Kosi. Well, House Chair, the country is undoubtedly facing a number of crises, and while we in the ACDP are eternally optimistic, we are facing crises of politics, economics, and confidence, which is hampering our potential for economic growth. And this, together with load shedding, many which say it was caused by Eskom, resulted in a 3.2% contraction in economic growth in the first quarter of this year. Now, it is evident that policy uncertainty and political factionalism will continue to undermine growth, and that any real reform measures or attempts at renewal will proceed haltingly and be met with fierce resistance, as we saw how Minister Pravin Gordhan has been targeted and the disgraceful conduct we saw earlier in this House. And members, I think it's disgraceful for the Honourable Shabamba to come and justify that conduct here. And we look forward to a parliamentary inquiry into that regard. This, the country can ill afford, as many, many people watch what happened, and we as leaders in this parliament need to set the example. The GDP contraction, Honourable Minister, will, as we all know, result in revenue estimates falling far short of the targets, which will in turn result in debt projections being out of sync and escalating. We've already seen the revenue shortfall from the previous year was more than 42 billion, which is way above projections, and that places severe challenges and severe pressures on debt consolidation path that we are supposed to be following. And so it is concerning when we seem to see more bailouts. We do understand the need for them, but it is a matter of great concern. When one then looks at the issue of SARS, and I was very interested when the Commissioner Kisweta, and congratulations to him as well on his appointment, presented to the committee, when we saw the hollowing out of SARS, and we commend him and the measures that he's taken to re-establish the integrity of such SARS, we welcome the establishment of the large business units and other compliance units that have been set up. But, Chair, it is very important that, as the Commissioner indicated, surely it is not just sufficient to re-establish. When you look at the hurt of the personnel and the damage to the integrity of the unit, further steps must be taken, and so we look forward to the steps being taken in that regard. The earlier debate, we discussed the whole issue of SOCs, and they remain a deep concern to us. And as I see my time is very limited, I would just like to emphasize this one aspect that I referred to in the earlier debate, and that is, Minister, if we are able to give additional funding to the Asset Forfeiture Unit and the Special Investigating Unit, they have the ability to collect billions. But we've seen baseline cuts, understandably. But if you give them more funds, they need to be able to do forensic inquiries. They can, as you said, I think the earlier minister indicated, the special tribunals, they can collect billions of rands, but they don't have the capacity. So let's see if we can't give them additional funds, because they will be able to collect funds, and it is a win-win situation. Let us also capacitate FRC, the NPA. They are doing good jobs, excellent jobs in bringing those persons accountable, but we need to see people being jailed for corrupt activities. I thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I now invite the Honorable MD Mabileza to take the debate forward.
Honorable House Chair, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, and all South Africans. The ANC's economic vision rests on the Freedom Charter's call that the people shall share in South Africa's wealth. Through economic transformation, we intend to build an equitable society in which there is decent work for all. In the face of such challenging economic conditions, the ANC welcomes the very adroit budget presented by the Minister of Finance in February 2019, which carefully, sensitively balances the need to stimulate economic growth, reduce wasteful expenditure, contain debt, increase revenues, and protect the poor. Implemented effectively, this budget will stimulate job creation, reduce inequalities, advance radical socio-economic transformation. We emphasize that transformation calls for more than growth alone. It requires a fundamental shift in the way wealth is created and shared to address the triple challenges facing our country, that is unemployment, inequality, and poverty. The budget carries forward and provides details of President Cyril Ramaphosa's 2018 State of the Nation address messages of unity, renewal, and hope. In an effort to revive the South African economy, government is maintaining the main budget expenditure ceiling, retaining national departments' compensation ceiling, and avoiding any increase in major tax instruments over the MTEF. To ensure that the expenditure ceiling remains intact, reprioritization of 32.4 billion shifts funding from non-performing areas to fund the upgrading of informal settlement and President's Economic Stimulus and Recovery Plan. According to the National Development Plan, NDP, by 2030, we seek to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality. We seek a country wherein all citizens have the capabilities to grasp the ever-broadening opportunities available. Our plan is to change the life chances of millions of our people, especially the youth, life chances to remain stewarded by our apartheid history. Despite new spending pressures and reduction, the budget remains strongly redistributive. We know that about 68% of consolidated expenditure goes towards social commitments, including education, health, social grants, and basic services. These services and transfer provided by all spheres of government will enable South Africans to access opportunities and live with dignity. The ANC government aims to realize the full potential of South Africa's economy and people, and to mobilize the resources of the state, business enterprises, and the wider community in a partnership of trust and mutual respect. This is also emphasized through the mission of the National Treasury to support economic growth and development, good governance, social progress, and rising living standards through the accountable, economical, efficient, equitable, and sustainable management of public finances, maintain of macroeconomic and financial sector stability, and effective financial regulation of the economy. The budget also provides for the National Health Insurance, NHI, which remains a priority of government. The NHI will enable South Africans to receive free services at the point of care in public and private quality accredited health facilities. By applying the principle of social solidarity and cross-subsidization, the NHI will reduce inequality in access to health care. Government social protection system has assisted greatly in reducing poverty and inequality by issuing social grants to and providing social welfare services for vulnerable groups. It is expected that by 2021-22, the old age grant will reach 4 million beneficiaries, which child support grants will reach an estimated 13.1 million beneficiaries over the same period. In this current economic climate, it is noted that some families survive through their pension payouts and grants. But the 53rd ANC Mangaung Conference resolved to taking economic transformation to new heights by fast-tracking the development of entrepreneurs, small and medium entities, including large-scale infrastructure development, and enhancing the capacity of the state to intervene in key sectors of the economy in pursuit to inclusive economic growth and development, employment creation, and broad-based empowerment. For renewal to have a far-reaching transformative impact, ANC has to propel the process of eradicating unemployment, poverty, and inequalities in our society by dealing with structural manifestation of colonialization of a special type. It must further ensure the mainstreaming of women in an economy across all sectors as a deliberate commitment to increase their access to finance, employment, and asset. President Ramaphosa's during 2018 SONA also announced a plan regarding budget reprioritization and more effective spending. During the MTBPS in October 2018, spending was projected to be 5.9 trillion over the medium term. Spending was expected to grow faster than inflation. In line with President Ramaphosa's proposed reprioritization, there was changes to grant structures and in-year allocation amounting to more than 50 billion. On this amount, reprioritization of 15.9 billion goes towards infrastructure programs supporting industrialization and the expanded public works program. An additional 16.5 billion of reprioritization will be allocated to various programs, including funding to restore capacity at the South African Revenue Service. Agriculture is seen as an important driver of our economic recovery. Therefore, the Land Bank will continue to support emerging farmers. The ANC commends efforts by the National Treasury of supporting the Land Bank through reprioritization to conclude transition worth 16.2 billion over the next 3 to 5 years from 2019. That will create jobs in agriculture. A significant portion of the funding is aimed towards export-oriented crops that are highly labor-intensive. Since 2011, municipalities have completed over 270 projects to the value of 3.7 billion, funded through the Neighborhood Development Partnership Grant. This has attracted over 8.7 billion of private investment in the township. In Tembisa, in Ekurhuleni, public invested to the value of 125 million of roads and transport infrastructure has enabled access to social and economic facilities. The investment will attract an estimated 3.5 billion of additional public and private investment in commercial, retail, residential development. In Sunduzi municipalities, over 77 million in public investment in the Edendale Urban Hub has already attracted private and public sector investment in excess of 1 billion. The ANC notes and welcomes the fact that National Treasury plans to continue to roll in this out in other parts
Honorable
of the
member,
country.
your time has expired.
The ANC, therefore, support the budget.
I now invite the Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable members, before you begin, Honorable Sheikh, honorable members, may I remind you that according to the set of rules which you have agreed to abide by, members are not allowed to take pictures and selfies or in the chamber.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Minister, Deputy Minister, colleagues, members in the gallery. Allow me to welcome the report of National Treasury. National Freedom Party will support this budget. It's the right thing to do if you want to take the country forward. Now, National Treasury is the custodian of our finances and has a very important role to ensure it maintains the highest level of accountability and good governance principles. Unfortunately, I think when we talk about the integrated financial management system, that says something else. Minister, you'll agree, but remember we've had a similar problem in eThekwini municipality, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing, it's now going into a billion, still not sorted out anyway. But some of the challenges that I've identified, Minister, is this. We have a budget of about 1.5 trillion. 600 billion is going towards compensation to employees and things. Another 240 some odd billion is now going to go to debt service cost. In terms of what I identified as the NFP and your former chief procurement officer, we lose about 40% on goods and services for not getting value for money starting right from the ground. So that is how much? Another 240 billion going to 300 billion. So the question is, how much of our resources is really going to delivering services to the people on the ground, if you take that away? Now, added to that is the fact that, and let me tell you, Minister, it starts right from us. If you read the media reports not long ago, the funds that we give for constituency offices, which I've mentioned many a time, there's no control measures in place. There's talk of 25 million rand that was given to a particular political party in this house, where there's question marks over its audit statements. There's nothing happening about it. We talk about international travel, we talk about hotel accommodation. Shouldn't we, given the economic situation in the country, cost containment measures, cut down on these things? We really need to do. And I can assure you, Minister, it is not going to affect our work, even if you cut costs there. Really, it is not going to do that. But let me also talk about the illicit financial flows. And let me tell you, there's lots and lots of resources in South Africa. Money is available, floating around. People are not paying taxes. Foreign businesses are not paying taxes. Millions of rands are leaving the country every day without fail. There is no control measures from the local municipal level to ensure businesses are registered and paying those taxes. I had an opportunity recently, somebody called me to intervene, there was a business transaction. 2 million rand, Minister, in hard cash, 200 rand notes, exchanged hands just from selling one business to the other. Where is the control measure? So we need to look at these things, and I can tell you there's a lot of money.
Honorable Sheikh Imam,
thank you very much.
Unfortunately, your time
the
has
National
expired.
Freedom Party supports the report tabled yesterday.
Order, honorable members. I now invite the Honorable D.T. George.
Thank you, Chairperson. 4 years ago, in May 2015, I spoke in the debate on the National Treasury budget. Unlike other emerging economies, our economy had not recovered from the Great Recession that followed the global financial crisis, and our unemployment rate, especially our youth unemployment, was climbing. Nothing has changed. Our economy continues to underperform its peers by over 4 percentage points, teetering on the brink of recession. Our debt has spiraled and unemployment levels present a significant risk to our social stability. This bailout budget, aimed primarily at keeping the broken state-owned enterprises afloat, does nothing for economic development and nothing for millions of our people who remain unemployed and in poverty. We needed a bold budget with significant cuts to government expenditure and coherent policy interventions aimed at revving up our economic growth. Instead, we got more of the same. A so-called developmental state remains our president's dream. He dreams of a functional state, intervening in our economy, achieving bullet trains and building a new city on a hill. Economic policy remains incoherent, and hundreds of billions will be thrown into the bottomless pit of broken state-owned enterprises while our economic growth continues to slide. The Western Cape economy, however, continues to power ahead with strong investor confidence and the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We have seen what a functional government with coherent economic policies can do. Sadly, we have neither. 4 years ago, Tom Mboweni, handpicked by the ANC government to serve as SARS commissioner, had already started destroying SARS. His brief was clearly to bring SARS to the heel of his political masters, evading their tax and raiding the people's money with refunds that they didn't earn. We don't know how much was stolen, likely billions, but we do know that it can be accurately calculated and the perpetrators prosecuted if there was political will. Once the envy of other tax jurisdictions, SARS's domestic and international reputation lies in tatters. This immeasurable damage cannot be calculated and directly impacts on our economic prospects. to ensure the utter destruction of any capability of SARS to hold the politically connected corrupt to account. A narrative on a so-called rogue unit was fabricated. SARS always had and should have capacity to investigate and hold to account tax evaders who enrich themselves at the expense of the most vulnerable members of our society. At the time, Tom Mboweni claimed that hundreds of millions were spent on the so-called rogue unit and that the funds were never accounted for. We still do not have a clear explanation of what SARS' capacity to address organized tax evasion is and how it is funded. The ANC government behaves as if it has collective amnesia. The new commissioner, whose appointment we welcome, has spoken very frankly about what he has found at SARS, and it is far worse than we thought it could be a few years ago. The commissioner has described broken and traumatized people who are expected to collect the revenue that we need to fund basic service delivery to poor and vulnerable people. The significant undercollection of estimated revenue materially affects the fiscal framework negatively. 4 years ago, I raised the fact that the committee chairperson at the time, Eunice Karam, had hidden a letter that the former SARS spokesperson had addressed to the committee. This negatively impacted on our ability to interact with Tom Mboweni when he appeared before the committee. Such were the extraordinary lengths that the ANC took to cover up the political infection of SARS by a government rotten to its core. Now it behaves as if it is surprised by what it has happened and will do its utmost to fix what it has caused and broken. The social contract between government and taxpayers is crucial to public financial well-being, and that contract is more strained now than ever before. It has always mattered to taxpayers that government spends their hard-earned tax contributions irregularly and wastefully. The collapse of SARS, first denied and defended by government, now publicly displayed and bemoaned, is a tax morality deal breaker for many, and that can't easily be fixed, if ever. During my time serving on SCOPA, I learned firsthand that nobody ever gets held to account. One set of thieves replaces another. There is much noise about holding the previous crowd to account, and then it starts again. Nothing has changed. Our economic picture is not healthy. Government overspending continues unabated, the revenue shortfall grows, and the deficit widens. Repayment of increased borrowing to fund that shortfall crowds out spending on basic service delivery. The politically motivated collapse at SARS is merely a manifestation of a government rotten to its core. Government remains oblivious to the fact that it has no money of its own and that it all belongs to the people. No matter how much shock is expressed and how much lip service is given, nothing has changed. A DA government will create a vibrant and economically flourishing environment by curtailing government expenditure, kick-starting entrepreneurial economic activity and growth, and dismantling failed state-owned enterprises. A DA government will focus on quality education for every South African, root out corruption, cronyism and nepotism, and enable every South African to become everything that they are capable of becoming. Until then, nothing will change. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. I now invite the Honorable G.J. Skosana to take the debate forward.
Ngiyathokoza sihlalo hloniphekileko ngithatha ithuba ngilotshise umhlonitshwa ungqongqotshe wezemali umhlonitshwa isekela ngqongqotshe wezemali amalungu ahloniphekileko wendlule yesibethamthetho intatanyiswa ezikhona nesitshaba sonke seSouth Africa ngiyanilotshisa ntambama. Honorable Chairperson, South Africa has evolved in a remarkable way in the past 25 years. The country has emerged as a constitutional democracy after an oppressive system made us as a pariah state shackled by sanctions and fraught with internal conflicts and prejudice. The high-level investment in key institutions which are critical to revenue generations like SARS is to build the people's confidence in the taxation system and their contribution towards this. These are all part of improving the investment climate by strengthening governance in institutions and removing policy bottlenecks. This builds upon restoring good governance and financial stability at public institutions and state-owned enterprises. His Excellency President Matamela Ramaphosa, when opening the 2018 Investment Summit, said, and I quote, "We have replaced the leadership in several state-owned enterprises, ensuring that we have people with experience, integrity, and the relevant skills who are now leading the development and implementation of sustainable business model." Close quote. Honorable members, tax revenues are critical to the functioning of any democracy. Lower tax collections have serious consequences and can impact to everyone, whether it be through lower expenditures on education or health, or through increases in tax rates to make up for shortfalls. The ability of a government to borrow at reasonable interest rates is also dependent on its ability to collect taxes. Tax is woven into the fabric of civil society. At essence, the implicit social compact between the state and those who use a country's resources as residents or as traders provides the moral and legal justification for paying and enforcing payment of taxes. The elements that make up this social compact between the state and the people of South Africa changed dramatically in 1994. SARS, as a semi-autonomous organ of state, was created in the early years of the birth of democracy in this country and has matured over the last 20+ years to become a tax and customs authority that is lauded for its professionalism and efficiency. Fellow citizens, the economic context within which we operate in South Africa is heavily influenced by global developments. The economy is not growing as expected and therefore affect the capacity of government to address the various challenges, chief among them being job creation, especially for the youth. Government has announced a number of interventions to stimulate the economy and to cushion the poor from some of the negative impact, some as the increased cost of living. Actions are also underway to address governance issues across government departments, agencies, and state-owned enterprises. All these efforts are aimed at ensuring that South Africa is viewed as an attractive and competitive market for trade and investment, which will in turn translate to enhanced returns for South African companies in the local and global markets. This will have a direct impact on enhancing economic growth and improving prospects for millions of South Africans who yearn for a better future for themselves and for their children. Tax revenue collection depend on improved tax compliance and strong economic growth. As a state, our focus is very much on fiscal consolidation. We note that Cabinet has constantly reiterated that we cannot spend the money we do not have, and we cannot borrow beyond our ability to repay. Until we can ignite growth and generate more revenue, we have to be tough on ourselves. This underlines the vital importance of SARS meeting its revenue collection target. Honorable Chair, the cooperation between financial institutions, public, law enforcement agencies, and other government agencies is critical in dealing with illicit financial flows. The Financial Intelligence Center, which is housed in the National Treasury, is a significant tool for monitoring the financial sector, but it's only limited to monitoring the formal financial sector. The financial sector has a high level of compliance with the Financial Intelligence Center Act. The Act and recent amendments give the Reserve Bank significant powers to monitor transactions and require banks to report suspicious transactions. The legislative framework also creates room for greater cooperation among the three institutions, which is the South African Revenue Service, the South African Reserve Bank, and the Financial Intelligence Center, in order to connect the dots and pick up patterns regarding money laundering, tax evasion, or fraud. Honorable members, The 54th ANC elective conference resolved that, I quote, government must urgently crack down on tax avoidance and illicit capital outflows, close quote. The ANC's vision for South Africa is that of a society based on democratic values and social justice and human rights, and a democratic and open society. Transparency and certainty are characteristics of a good tax system. The Tax Administration Act set out precise methods and standards for tax administration to be fair, transparent, equitable, and predictable. The budget has assured us of greater prospect for investment and focus in inclusive growth and investment in social infrastructure and in particular in local government infrastructure. The commitment of investing in the economic zones located either in or next to townships can only be good for job creation, especially for the youth and women. We are confident that the budget will assist to position South Africa well with the investment and rating agencies. We are hopeful that the budget has clarified and instilled some sense of confidence to the investors and rating agencies in our country. Cheers. Honorable Chair, before I sit down, I think it's imperative just to comment on some of the things that other members raised. I heard the Honorable Lewis, I think, welcome, his comment. Yeah, Honorable Hill Lewis. We really welcome his comment that he's pledging support on behalf of the Democratic Alliance to support the Minister of Finance and the department in making sure that we are able to, the Minister and the department, they are able to deal with the challenges that are facing the department and the country at large. However, he also sounded negative by saying that the economy is not going to grow by 1% this year. So we need not to be that negative. I think, Honorable Hill Lewis, you said it in your own words that the minister is a hard worker. So because the minister is a hard worker, I think the minister needs the support of all political parties, especially this standing committee on finance. So we call upon the Democratic Alliance and all other political parties to support the minister in order to deal with all the challenges and also to ensure that the economy grows with that particular 1%. Well, I was very disappointed with the Honorable Shibambu when he came here because I expected that he was going to apologize on behalf of what happened during the debate of the public enterprise. I thought what happened, it happened because Honorable Shibambu and Honorable Malema as leaders of the EFF were not here. But I'm very much disappointed that he's condoning that and he described it as a courageous act. Well, members, it's surprising because when Honorable Minister Kodan was a member of the Portfolio Committee of Public Enterprise, he was the darling of the EFF. They used to describe him as one of the few ANC members who are revolutionary and who are fighting corruption and state capture. But immediately, Honorable Kodan was appointed as a minister. He became overnight, he became an enemy to the EFF. So we don't know what is it that they were expecting from the appointment of Mr. Kodan because continuously they are attacking him. So it's very much unfortunate, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chair, I think the EFF need to have a post-brand.
Honorable Skosana, a moment. I note you, Honorable Shibambu.
Point of order. You know, in terms of the parliamentary rules, we must stick to what we're debating. First is debating the budget. This is not a budget, it's a budget vote. It's different from the budget.
Honorable Shibambu, that's not a point of order, it's a point of debate. Honorable Shibambu,
so that,
this is
what,
not,
what saying
Honorable
is
Shibambu, this is not a point of order, it's a point of debate.
A budget vote is part of the budget, Honorable Shibambu. It's part of the budget. Now, Honorable Chair, I think the EFF must go to a post-brand and decide and rethink what do they want to do in this particular parliament. Because you can't oppose everything. A good political party, it's a political party that will oppose when it is necessary. But it will also give credit where credit is due. But now the EFF is opposing everything. So you need to go to a post-brand and rethink and decide what is it exactly that you want to do in this particular parliament. The Honorable George is raising the issue of the rock unit and all these other particular issues. I think we know, the findings by the public protector. However, as you know, in terms of the separation of power and separation of responsibilities by different arms of the state, you know that the findings by the public protector has written to the president as the head of the executive. So we've got confidence in the office of the president that the office of the president will be able to handle that particular matter. As much as we also have confidence in the office of the public protector. Because public protector is a Chapter 9 institution, and it is us who have advocated for the establishment of all Chapter 9 institutions. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. On order, honorable members. I now call upon the Minister of Finance to close the debate.
Very economical with your time, Minister. We love it.
Madam Chair, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to come back to the podium. I'm sorry, my shouting skills are rather short. So I hope you can hear me. The Deputy Minister of Finance and myself have concluded the allocation of responsibility between the two of us. So one of the things that he's going to be doing is to start the process of the formation of a state bank. Quite a huge responsibility that he's going to deal with. It's a matter of responding to a cry amongst our people. And that cry fundamentally has to do with the discriminatory nature of the established banking institutions. So there has to be a response. So, it's big tasks that he has there. Secondly, let me deal with the matter of the illicit economy in particular, illicit financial flows and the illicit tobacco market. This is a matter that we're dealing with. SARS, Financial Intelligence Center, and they should be able to come to some conclusion. But this is a permanent warfare. It's not going to end easily. The SARS already is really on its way to recouping a significant amount of revenue from the danger that was posed by the illicit tobacco market, and we're making great progress there. You know, these fellows had become so brave that some of their factories were identifiable. Marlboro or Framp, just openly producing cigarettes illegally, but that is being taken care of. Let me deal with the issue of, and the illicit financial flows as well, have a lot to do with the need to find cooperation from some of the tax havens, such as the Isle of Man, because that's where most of these activities run through. In my previous function in the private sector as chairman of one of the companies, I felt that I was not receiving sufficient information about the operations of our office at the Isle of Man. So I eventually got into the plane and went there. As I was arriving at the airport, I was met by some advertisements of South African banks at the Isle of Man. So we're dealing with that. On municipalities, and if the truth be told, the management systems in the municipalities, the caliber and technical capacity of some of the municipalities is very poor. That's the reality of the situation. In some instances, if you ask somebody who's in the municipality, where is the water treatment plant? How is the sewerage system working? Basic things like that. I have been charged by my municipality huge amounts of electricity for electricity I have not used because I have a solar system. But I get charged for electricity, which is quite funny. So the technical capacities, more often than not, actually I do have a little bit of electricity from the, so it's dual. The bulk of it is solar, and then in case something happens. Now, the fact of the matter is, and we must all admit in this house and do something about it, there's a lot of political interference in the municipalities, and we have to deal with all of that. Now, I know, Honorable Shibambu, you'd like to travel a lot, which is fine. So you might want to go to Norway and Singapore and so on. You don't need to do that, really. You can do that desktop research. It's very simple. And if the desktop research is not sufficient, you could ask the Norwegian ambassador for some information. So you don't need to travel. All this international traveling might not be necessary. I wanted to end off by saying to the committee that I really appreciate the recommendations that you have made. They need to be attended to. And that thing of the IT system in the National Treasury is being attended to and has to be attended to more. But I thought that one of the things we need to do as we take part in this debate is just to have the backdrop a bit about maybe the nature of our society, which has changed. There's been massive changes in our society. And sometimes I feel that our debates are stagnant. They're based on what the country looked like 10 years ago. The country has changed a lot. And the changes are, amongst other things, the massive population movement away from the countryside into the semi-urban, semi-peri-urban, and urban areas and the major cities. That's the reality. That's why even when we talk about certain policies and what we need to do, those must be based on the scientific reality on the ground and not on some sort of yesteryear way of thinking. The second thing has to do with the massive structural changes that have occurred in the economy. An economy which, for now, about 60%, let me say, the tertiary sector of the economy is about 60% of GDP. It's no longer mining and agriculture and old-style manufacturing. And these massive changes in population and the structure of the economy dictate that we change our mindset and ways of thinking. Otherwise, we'll never resolve the major structural issues that we confront. So the
Order, honorable members.
Okay, have you finished fighting now? Okay, thanks. When you're finished fighting, I can proceed. So these massive changes and these requirements of the tertiary sector of the economy are not quite in sync with the education outcomes that we get. The consequence of which will be this increase in unemployment. And we have to attend to the relationship between the changed structural mix of the economy and the skill sets that we need. I thought that as we debate all of these things, that background was very important. Madam Chairperson, I would like to thank the members for their most invaluable contributions. And I thank you very much indeed.
Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary. The mini plenary will now rise.